The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon filled our small dining room. It was a scent I had worked all day to create. Outside, snow fell in thick, silent blankets. Inside, it was supposed to be perfect. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. My mother, Sarah, set down her wine glass. She didn't look at me. She looked at the empty space where my plate sat on her table. "Elena," she said, her voice entirely casual. "You need to move out. Tonight. June is coming home after the breakup, and she needs her healing space back." The room went silent. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked at the dinner I had paid for, cooked and served, and felt the last remaining ember of affection in my chest turn into absolute zero. I didn't flip the table. Screaming is for people who think their voice still matters. I knew mine didn't. Instead, I stood up. The chair scraped harsh against the floor. My mother didn't even blink. She just continued carving the turkey I had bought. "It's not personal, Elena," Sarah said, still focusing on the meat. "June is fragile right now. She needs her healing space, and your room has the best light. You understand, don't you? You're the strong one. You can figure something else out." Healing space. My sister, a 24-year-old influencer whose career consisted of unboxing videos I likely subsidized, needed healing space. My shelter was the price of her recovery. "I understand," I said. My voice was flat, devoid of inflection. It was the voice I used when presenting quarterly loss reports. Just facts, no emotion. I walked upstairs. The hallway was a shrine to June. Photos of her at prom, graduation, pageants. There was one blurry photo of me from 3rd grade tucked in a corner. The house was a chaotic mess of live, laugh, love pillows and performative warmth. My room was different. It was the only space that made sense. Organized. Color-coded. A sanctuary of logic in a house built on emotional quicksand. I pulled my suitcase from under the bed. I packed only what mattered. My laptop, my hard drives, the file box containing my legal documents. I looked at the knickknacks on my dresser, a snow globe from my father, and left them. They were artifacts of a life that was being deleted. Downstairs I heard them laughing. The tension had broken the moment the problem removed herself. June was probably already planning how to redecorate my room for her podcast studio. I zipped the suitcase. It made a final, decisive sound. I put on my coat, did a final mental audit of the space. Bed made, desk clear, and walked back down. They were eating. No one looked up as I walked to the front door. No one asked where I was going. I opened the door and stepped out into the biting Chicago winter. The wind hit me like a physical blow, freezing the tears I hadn't realized were forming. But the cold felt good. Felt honest. I threw my suitcase in the back seat and started my car. I looked back at the house one last time. The windows glowed with golden light, a perfect picture of a happy family. It was a beautiful lie. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't paying for it anymore. The motel room smelled of industrial cleaner, but to me it smelled like safety. It was a sterile beige box, ugly and impersonal. And it was beautiful because nobody here was asking me for anything. I sat at the small desk and opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life. While my family dealt in guilt trips, my computer dealt in binary. Ones and zeros. Truth or falsehood. I navigated to the folder named House Expenses and opened the master spreadsheet. Row by row, the history of my servitude scrolled past. January $2,400. Mortgage assistance. February $2,400. Mortgage assistance. Plus $800. Mom's essentials. Essentials. I remembered that month. Sarah claimed she needed medical supplies for her back. I found out later via Facebook that those supplies were a weekend spa retreat. Kept scrolling. The numbers were relentless. They were a monthly subscription fee I had been paying for the privilege of being tolerated. People ask why victims stay. Why smart people write checks to people who hurt them. It isn't stupidity. It is conditioning. This is the trap of normalizing cruelty. When you grow up in a home like mine, you are taught that love is a transaction. You are taught that your value is tied to your utility. If I was useful, I was safe. I wasn't paying a mortgage. I was paying rent for a mother's affection that was never actually for sale. I typed the formula to sum the total and hit enter. $57,600. The number sat there bold and black. $57,000. That was a down payment on a condo. That was a graduate degree. That was freedom. I looked at the number, and I didn't feel the heavy weight of obligation anymore. I felt the cold edge of an audit. In my line of work, when you find a discrepancy of this magnitude, you don't get emotional. You investigate. I minimized the spreadsheet. Sarah had always told me the mortgage was with a specific local bank, a high-interest loan she was forced to take. But looking at the total sum now, the analyst in me woke up. The math didn't work. I wasn't just a daughter anymore. I was a forensic accountant looking at a crime scene. Closed the laptop. The transaction was over. Tomorrow, I wasn't going to mourn the loss. I was going to audit the books. The silence didn't last. Narcissists require fuel, and my absence was a vacuum. Started 48 hours later. I was eating a vending machine sandwich when my phone lit up. June mentioned you in their story. I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity is a flaw I haven't patched. The video was shot in my old bedroom. The walls were already swathed in sheer fabrics. June's face appeared, filtered to perfection. Finally clearing out the negative energy, the caption read, "Turning this into my Zen Denver. Sometimes you have to let go of people who don't vibrate at your frequency. #sister wounds. Negative energy. I was the one who paid for the internet she was using to upload that insult." Then came Sarah on Facebook. A black and white photo of herself looking out a window. "A mother's love is unconditional," she wrote. "Even when your children abandon you in your time of need. Please pray for our family as we navigate this cruel transition." The comments were a chorus of validation. "Stay strong, Sarah. Kids these days are entitled." They were rewriting reality. In their version, I wasn't the evicted daughter. I was the runaway villain. Then came the enforcer, Aunt Erin. "Elena, I am disgusted. Your mother says you stormed out and left them with nothing. How can you be so selfish? June is fragile. Come back, apologize, and fix this financial mess." My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to scream that I didn't storm out, I was thrown out. But I stopped. In negotiation, you never react to an emotional outburst with an emotional defense. It validates the attacker's frame. I didn't reply. I didn't block them. I needed them to feel comfortable enough to keep leaving a digital footprint. Instead, I opened my browser. They wanted to talk about financial messes. Fine. Let's talk about finances. I navigated to the Cook County Recorder of Deeds website. If Sarah was truly losing everything, the mortgage status would reflect that. I typed in the address. 1402 Maplewood Drive. The search wheel spun. A list of documents populated. I scrolled past the original deed. And then I stopped. The most recent document wasn't a foreclosure notice. It was titled, "Release of Mortgage/Satisfaction of Lien." The date stamped on the file was 5 years ago. I clicked the PDF. "The debt secured by the mortgage is hereby released." The house was paid off. It had been paid off 3 years before I moved back in. I sat back, the room spinning. For 18 months, Sarah had wept about the bank and the payments. She had told me to wire my rent to a specific holding account because the lender changed servicers. I logged into my bank and pulled up the wire history. The recipient was S.J. Holdings, LLC. I checked the Secretary of State's business search. J. Holdings, LLC. Registered agent Sarah Jenkins. Member June Jenkins. J. Sarah and June. There was no mortgage. There was no bank. My mother hadn't been using my money to keep a roof over our heads. She had been funneling my salary into a private LLC co-owned by her and my sister. The Zen Denver. The designer clothes. The spa trips. I hadn't been saving my family. I had been funding their retirement and my sister's lifestyle. They charged me rent to live in a house they owned free and clear, lied about a mortgage to guilt me into paying double, and evicted me when I became inconvenient. This wasn't dysfunction. This was fraud. I looked at the screen, at the proof of a $50,000 theft. The sadness vanished, incinerated by white-hot clarity. I didn't need to defend myself against Aunt Erin. I didn't need to argue with June. I picked up my phone to call the police but stopped. They would call it a civil matter. I needed leverage. I downloaded every document. I took screenshots. Then I opened a blank email draft. It wasn't time to scream. It was time to collect. The text arrived at 6 in the morning on the 1st of the month. "Elena, I'm willing to put this mess behind us. But the mortgage is due today. If you don't transfer the funds by noon, the bank will start foreclosure. Meet me at the Starbucks on 4th. I'll accept your apology. The audacity was impressive. Even standing on the edge of a cliff she had built, she was still trying to sell me the view. I put on my coat, grabbed the manila envelope I had prepared, and walked out. Sarah walked into the coffee shop at noon wearing her suffering mother costume. No makeup, wrinkled coat. She sat down without buying a coffee and placed her hands on the table, palms up. "You look tired," she said. Critique, not a concern. "This rebellion isn't suiting you. Living in a motel. Pathetic." "I'm fine," I said. My heart rate was steady. "Well, I'm not," she snapped. "June has been crying. Do you know how selfish you are? The bank called me this morning, Elena. They said if the wire doesn't hit by 5, they're sending the sheriff." She was good. If I hadn't seen the PDF, I would have believed the tremors in her voice. "The bank called you?" "Yes. Yes. I managed to talk them down, but I need the money now. 2,400. Let's call it 3,000 for late fees. Transfer it now and you can come home. June will let you sleep on the couch." I reached into my bag. Sarah's eyes lit up. She expected a checkbook. Instead, I slid the thick manila envelope across the table. "What is this?" she frowned. "It's the mortgage," I said. She tore it open. She pulled out the stack of papers. A deed. The release of mortgage from 5 years ago. The LLC registration for SJ Holdings. My spreadsheet. I watched her face. First confusion. Then recognition. Finally terror. The blood drained from her face. Her hand started to shake, and this time it wasn't a performance. This is the illusion of power of an empty wallet. I had always seen my mother as a giant, a woman who dictated reality. I thought her power came from her strength. But watching her clutch the proof of her fraud, I realized she wasn't a giant. She was a parasite. Her power was rented using my salary. Her arrogance, her matriarchal status. It was all a costume she bought with my money. Without my capital, she had no leverage. She wasn't a powerful woman. She was just a broke con artist in a coffee shop. Sarah looked up. The arrogance was gone. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "Public records are public for a reason, Sarah," I said. "I know there is no mortgage. I know about the $57,000. "Elena, wait," she stammered, reaching out. "You don't understand. Taxes. June's medical bills. I did it for us. I was investing it for the family." "You were investing it in designer purses," I corrected. "And you evicted me because I became too expensive to maintain." "I can explain." Her voice cracked. "Please, don't do anything crazy. We're family." "I'm not doing anything crazy," I said, standing up. "I'm just auditing the account." "Where are you going?" She scrambled up, knocking her chair over. "Elena, you can't leave me here. What am I supposed to do?" I looked down at her. "You're resourceful. You fooled me for 2 years. I'm sure you can fool someone else. But the Bank of Elena is closed." I walked out, leaving her calling my name like a ghost haunting a demolished house. The snow had melted by the time I hit send. To Aunt Erin, Uncle Mike, Grandma June. Subject, FWD. Property title and transfer records. 1402 Maplewood. I attached the deed, the bank statement showing transfers to SJ Holdings, and a single line of text. The house has been paid off for 5 years. The money I sent was used for luxury retail, not survival. I am no longer funding this lifestyle. Do not contact me unless you have a repayment plan. I hit send and turned off my phone. In finance, once an asset becomes a liability, you liquidate it. My family had been a liability for a long time. The liquidation was complete. The fallout was absolute. I heard Sarah tried to claim I forged the documents, but math is stubborn. The numbers didn't lie, and the flying monkeys went silent. Sarah and June were left in a house they owned but couldn't afford to heat. 3 months later, I stood in a living room that smelled like fresh paint. It was a condo in the city. Small, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows. I held the keys. They were heavy, cold, and mine. I walked to the window. I thought about the $57,000. For weeks, I had agonized over that loss. I had felt the urge to sue, to wring every cent back. But standing there, I realized something about revenge. This is the justice of the sower. There is the justice of the sword. Punitive, backward-looking. That was what I wanted in the coffee shop. But the higher form of justice is the justice of the sower. Focuses on the harvest. If I spent years fighting Sarah in court, I would still be tethered to her. Instead, I chose to plant. I used the money I would have sent them, the monthly mortgage, the emergency funds, and invested it in this place. I invested it in my portfolio. I invested it in therapy to unlearn the conditioning that told me I was only lovable if I was paying. My success is the ultimate retribution because it is something they cannot tax, cannot claim, and cannot ruin. I am not a victim of theft. I paid a $50,000 tuition fee to learn that I am worth more than what I can provide. It was expensive, but looking at this peaceful room that belonged only to me, I decided it was a bargain. Took my phone out. I scrolled to Sarah's contact. Block. I scrolled to June. Block. I put the phone on the counter. I had a shelf to organize. I had a life to audit. And for the first time in 26 years, the books were finally balanced. If you've ever had to buy your own freedom from the people who were supposed to protect you, share your story in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're building a community that sees the truth.